Hello and welcome back. So this is going to be the last video before we do an exercise where we put everything together that we've learned and we'll create a web page and see how far we can get with just the skills that we've learned. So this final video is about padding and margin, and it's the last thing I think we need to be able to put together a kind of simple web page. So you may have heard of padding and margin before. If you haven't, I'll show you how it works. Now I've realized we've got so much junk on this page, haven't we? Let's just get rid of it all. Let's make this really simple. Let's get rid of the footer. We don't need the footer. And in this header, we don't need the header tags, and we don't need, I'll tell you what, let's keep the logo because that's kind of cool. We'll move that back to where it used to be, and then we'll get rid of all these buttons. So there we go. That's a lot simpler. I'll save that and I'll refresh the page. Right, now at least we're looking at some clean code here. So in terms of padding and margin, they are CSS properties. So a little bit like font size or background color or color, there's something called padding and margin. And they do similar things but different. And the best way to explain it is with a button. So if we look at this button, can you see that we've got the text and then we've got the border around the edge, and there's space between the content and the border. So if I was to play around with the padding and margin, it's going to play around with the space either within the button or outside the button. So let's do this, okay? I'm going to put a class on this button and we're going to call it padding and margin because we're going to play around with both. There we go. Now that class doesn't exist at the moment, so let's have a look at the top. We've got primary, all these, we don't need any of these classes, and then we don't need any of these styles. Let's just get rid of all of them. We'll start from scratch. Okay, so my class was called padding and margin, so I do padding and margin. So that's my class. I open up the curly brackets and now I can put some properties and values in there. So the first one I'm going to do is padding. So if I type in padding and then colon, so it's just like writing background color or color. And then I'm going to put in 10 pixels and then that I save that and I come back and I refresh. Now what's happened is all the styles have gone. It's no longer pink and things like that. But can you see there's now 10 pixels between the content and the border. So I'm now in control of that spacing. If I change it to 100 and save it, now there's going to be 100 pixels between the content and the border. So that's what padding does. It just works within itself and says how much space is there between the content and the border. So if I refresh that, let's just do 10, that's better. So that's what padding is, whereas margin is the space outside of the border. So how it interacts with all the other elements on the page. So rather than doing padding, let's just change that to margin and do 10 pixels. Now actually, if I do 10, you probably won't even notice what's happening. So let's go for 100. So now I'm saving, I'm applying the property of margin to my button. So let's have a look. Right, that was weird, what's just happened. But what you see has actually happened is it's now 100 pixels from the logo, it's 100 pixels from the left edge, it's 100 pixels from the right edge, and 100 pixels from the bottom. But the default browser aligns it to the left. That's why it's not kind of in the center. So there we go. Around my button now, it said, no one come within 100 pixels of me because I've got a 100 pixel margin. You know, don't dare come near me. So you're in control of where the other elements are in kind of reference to this particular button. So if I change that now down to 10 and I refresh it, now it's only 10 pixels from the logo and 10 pixels from the left. And you can do both if you want. So this particular class, padding and margin, let's do both. Because it's called padding and margin, I'll do padding first. If I just hit enter. So if I write padding, not poding, padding 10 pixels. And then because I want to do two properties within this one class, I have to do the semicolon here. And then if I save that, I'm now applying 10 pixel padding and 10 pixel margin to my one button. All right, we'll save that and we'll refresh it. And there we go. I've got my 10 pixel padding in the button and then 10 pixel margin around the outside. So there we go. That's kind of the simple way of being able to understand and define how much space is in your element and how much space is around the element. And I can do that on anything. If I want more space around the logo, I'll just add margin or padding around the logo. And that's it. And now we're ready to do our first exercise, put it all together and make a simple web page.